The hardest thing about losing someone isn't always the goodbyes, it's the what-ifs that sneak in later, like shadows you can't shake off. I got that call at 2:17 a.m., standing in my kitchen in Boise, Idaho, barefoot on the cold linoleum, and the nurse's voice just cut right through me. "I'm sorry, your sister Sarah passed at 2:11. Alone," she said, no one there to hold her hand, and that hit me like a freight train, because Sarah was only 28, tough as nails, but fighting demons I couldn't fix, and I'd missed her calls that night, buried in work at the hardware store, telling myself I'd call back soon. Grief settled in like fog over the Boise River, thick, disorienting, making everything feel heavier. I'd picture her in that sterile room at St. Luke's, chipped blue nail polish on her fingers, that crooked grin she'd flash even when things were falling apart, saying, "Jack, quit worrying. I'm fine, you big lug." But she wasn't fine. Years of bad choices, bad breaks, the kind that small towns like ours gossip about endlessly, judging from afar while pretending to care. I dragged myself to Harlan's Hardware the next morning, the family shop under the interstate, smelling of sawdust and oil, where bolts and nails made sense when nothing else did, stacking invoices, ignoring the stares from regulars who knew Sarah's story, her ups and downs, the way she'd light up a room one day and vanish the next. I kept my head down, paying bills, calling the landlord about her apartment, breathing through the ache, but inside, guilt gnawed at me. Why wasn't I there? Why did she have to go out alone? Then, mid-morning, the bell jangled, and in walked this guy, leather jacket worn like a second skin, beard streaked with silver, posture that said he'd seen it all and didn't owe explanations. On his vest, that skull patch from the Road Reapers Club, the kind folks cross the street to avoid. The cashier froze mid-sip of coffee, but he just peeled off his gloves, set them down gentle-like, and asked, "You Jack Harlan?" Voice gravelly, steady. I nodded, throat tight, and he introduced himself as Rusty, Iron. Malone folks call him Iron. He slid a sealed envelope across the counter, careful as if it were glass, and said, "Your sister knew me for a few hours. I was there when she passed, and she asked me to find you." The room tilted a bit, everything going quiet except my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Iron didn't rush, it just held my gaze, eyes like weathered steel, and explained. He'd been at the hospital visiting a buddy from his club, stepped out for water, saw Sarah alone in the hall with a paper cup, that stubborn smile flickering. She didn't want pity, so he talked about anything else, a thunderstorm in Arizona that turned the desert to steam, like old regrets rising and fading away. She laughed a little, said it sounded like second chances, then things got quiet, and she reached for his hand. He stayed till the end, no questions asked. The envelope. Her last words, scribbled quick. "Jack, don't beat yourself up. I asked a stranger to stay because you're human, and I wanted you to remember me fierce, not fragile. I wasn't scared." He was kind, like a storm that clears the air. "Let this soften you, not scar you. Love always, Sarah." Tears blurred everything. But before I could process it, this sharp laugh sliced the air. Mike Donovan, a regular with his faded cap and that smug authority he wore like a badge, leaning against the wall. "What's this, biker charity hour?" His buddies chuckled, low and mean, and the tension thickened because Mike had history. His brother lost everything to the same struggles Sarah faced. But instead of empathy, he turned bitter, blaming folks like her for draining the town, stirring up old community grudges over resources, support programs, even petty stuff like who gets what at the local HOA meetings. He'd cornered me before, muttering how people like Sarah were why taxes went up, why the neighborhood went downhill, personal vendetta wrapped in self-righteousness. I muttered, "Enough, Mike," but it came out weak, grief stealing my fire. He leaned in closer, breath sour with coffee and spite, smirking. "Heard she chased off the nurses, couldn't keep family around either. Guess weakness runs deep." Iron didn't budge at first, just that load-bearing stillness. But then he said, quiet and precise, "Say her name with respect, or don't say it at all." Mike rolled his eyes, angling for the crowd's approval. "Respect's earned." Palanchi didn't, chasing highs while the rest of us foot the bill. The shop went dead silent, folks shifting uneasily, but Mike fed off it, shoving my shoulder hard. "Your sister's mess cost us all." Jack admitted. "Town's better off without." He never finished. I swung clumsy, fueled by raw hurt. Grazing his jaw in, he lunged back, fist flying. But Iron stepped in like thunder, catching Mike's wrist midair, twisting just enough to make him wince. You want to hit someone? Hit minute him, never him. The air crackled, everyone frozen, phones half out, waiting for blood. Mike spat. You don't scare me, old-timer. But his voice cracked, pride cracking with it. He grabbed a wrench off the counter, waving it like a threat, desperate to reclaim control, years of resentment boiling over. Seeing me as the symbol of everything he hated, the brother who enabled what destroyed his own family. Iron didn't flinch. Put it down, or regret it longer than your ego can handle. The crowd murmured, eyes on Mike, now the bully exposed. His mouth wan with the community laid bare, not just grief-mocking but deeper, tied to land disputes where his family lost property to developers, blaming drifters like Sarah for the town slide. Mike's hand shook, but he dropped it, muttering curses, retreating with his pals slinking behind, humiliated, the shop's judgment turning on him for once. Adrenaline crashed out of me, knees buckling, but Iron's hand on my shoulder steadied everything. You stood your ground, be proud. The manager nodded, softer than usual. Take the day, Jack, we got this. Outside, the Idaho sky hung low and gray, but the air tasted freer. Iron lit a smoke, exhaled slow, and said, Ever ride? I shook my head. Sarah always teased I was too cautious. He smirked faintly. Road helps sometimes, doesn't fix, just reminds you're moving. I hesitated, then nodded, climbing on behind him, helmet snug, Sarah's letter pressed to my chest. The engine roared, Boise blurring as we hit the highway toward the foothills, wind whipping grief into something lighter release, her laugh echoing in the gusts. We pulled over at a bluff overlooking the Snake River, water shimmering like it held secrets. I read her words aloud, voice cracking but strong, then let the paper gouging it dance down, swallowed by the current. Goodbye, Sarah. Thank you. Iron shared his own scar, lost a sister young, alone, swore he'd never let that happen again, owed it to her, to himself. We sat till dusk, silence saying more than words, grief shifting from a weight to something I could carry differently. Weeks later, back at the shop, folks looked at me with respect, not pity. Mike stayed away, his venom faded. I taped Sarah's photo above the register, her grin wild and alive. That night, Iron rolled up again. No words needed. I hopped on, the road stretching endless. Grief doesn't vanish, it reshapes, turning strangers into brothers, love into miles ahead. But here's the thing that sticks with me: was Mike just a bully? Or did the town fail him too, letting old wounds fester into cruelty? What do you think? Where's the line between grief's rage and real justice in a place like this? Drop a comment below, share your take, subscribe if this hit home. We all got stories that change us, right?